Greetings, Emmaus. I'm Scott Wopata, the director of the Community Action Center here in Northfield. Thank you for having me, and thanks for inviting me into this video message. Pastor Tim and Pastor Abe asked me just to share a little bit about how we're doing in Northfield from the perspective or vantage point of Community Action Center. And so just thanks for having me. I hope that this is encouraging and at the same time revealing. It's really humbling to be in this position, especially now in the middle of COVID, but to be at CAC. And I'll say I came in about a year and a half ago thinking just so excited about building relationships with everybody in the community. And I was extremely humbled by the scale of CAC in our community. CAC serves about 4,000 individuals in our town, 4,000 low-income individuals. And that means many of you here, many of you listening to this message, have come to CAC to ask for help. And I think about 4,000 as a part of our population, and if you don't include the college students, that's 20 to 25% of our entire community is involved in receiving support from CAC. And you start layering in how many people actually volunteer, which is a few thousand. You layer in people who are donating, which is a few thousand. You're up to, getting close to 10,000 people just in and out and having a touch point with Community Action Center, our mission is to build a healthy, caring, and just community. A community that promotes justice. A community that cares, a community that's healthy. And so just so excited to share all of this with everybody here in this community. And for you who are listening, whether you're a client or a volunteer, or you donate, or you've been staff, or any of those things, so excited about all the impact you've made in our community. And so let's start there. 4,000 people, it's pretty normal in this town to need help. 4,000 is a lot of us. Making it normal to need help changes our way of thinking about it. It makes it harder to think about us serving them because there's just too many of us. It's beautiful, right? It's beautiful because it becomes more about community and standing in solidarity with each other. It takes away our ability to be saviors for each other. And perhaps it puts God back in the work of salvation. I think that's the right place for him to be. So let's talk about COVID. First and foremost, people ask about food, and yes, over the last 12 plus months to now, we've seen this 30+% growth in people needing help with food, especially in the summer months now that we're in COVID, and the desire and need for people to be able to access fresh fruits and vegetables and healthy food is just tremendous. I think more stark is this reality of financial assistance. Every 3 weeks during COVID, CAC is providing about 12 months of our normal financial support to families throughout the community. What that means is that in a normal year, if this pattern continues, CAC in 12 months will provide what it historically has provided in 17 years. And so we'll be doing 17 years worth of financial assistance with families throughout the next 12 months. Think about trying to do 17 years worth of work in 1 year. It's an absolutely humbling space to be in. And the visual on what COVID has done to this, if you look right at that April and that May and then into June and July, and just the absolute spike in families falling behind and struggling as they lose jobs or lose income or lose multiple jobs or have multiple people in the home losing multiple jobs. It's staggering. Think about the dire circumstances around a funeral in town. Somebody passed away from COVID, and sometimes it feels like COVID is so far away, you don't relate with it or doesn't feel real, and trust me, it's extremely real for some of the people that have been impacted by this, who've lost a family member, who've been struggling with income and now have a funeral cost to bear, yet alone the grief that comes with that. So those are a lot of numbers, and they're humbling. But let's talk about people. Let's talk about Carlos, who works a construction job and had to stop working because he had to quarantine because his wife got sick. And then because he was quarantining with her, he got sick, and then he's off work for 4 weeks now, and then he can't quite get his lungs back in place, and he's not quite healthy, and he's struggling to keep up at work. Now he's falling behind on rent, and the next grocery bill is due, and his kids are eating a lot, and all of a sudden what was a healthy life and a good job and a hard-working person is at a moment where he needs to ask for help. And that's where relationships matter, and I want to highlight that. We talked about numbers, but this is about relationships. This is what I wanted to do when I started at CAC, but the scale of it is so big. It's just, this is when a friend and someone you trust eases your concern. They ease your pride, they ease all the barriers, and they normalize asking for help. And we say, I've been there. You're not alone. A lot of us need help. These are tough times. It's okay to ask for help. Without that relationship, without the love of a friend or family, Carlos struggles on. He's afraid to ask for help. He's afraid to not ask for help. Down and down into the grinder of shame and guilt and anxiety. We as a church and as Christians, we need to be in that moment. Before the shame and guilt, we need to be in fellowship and to be honest with each other. We need to normalize asking for help. Talk about Jessica, and Jessica was a hardworking mom of a young kid holding down 2 jobs, trying to find an affordable place to live, but just could not find something that was sustainable, and so hopping from couch to couch with friend to friend, and then all of a sudden COVID hits and she loses both of her jobs, and the family she was staying with says, you can't stay here anymore, we're sheltering in place, we can't have a person and their kid in our house on our couch. So she goes, where do you go? Shelter in place. Have you tried finding an apartment in normal times, yet alone when it's shelter in place? Where does she turn to? And those are those moments where we understand, if you're in a relationship with somebody and they know somebody, and you can be that friend to say those really powerful words of, I've been there, you're not alone. A lot of us need help. These are tough times. It's okay to ask. Let's check in with someone who can help. You know, I even reference systems like affordable housing, and systems are really important, but they can feel removed from people. But systems around like affordable housing, policies on affordable housing can seem like politics, but Jessica, we talked about, seems like a person, and one of the views we have at CAC is how these things collide. We could talk about how systemic decisions that rewarded more expensive housing options over time, and those same decisions that limited affordable housing options, have an impact. We see these impacts, we see the impacts of these systems and the cost of a political policy, that it might leave a 7-year-old with her mom on the street. And we tend to call that collision when it ends in that type of impact. We call that injustice. So we need to look at these systems. You can follow the impacts of systems when you look at the Jessicas and the 7-year-olds and the children of the world. But what if it was just as clear that systems were impacting our Black, Brown, and Indigenous community members more than white community members? What if we went back to the numbers when we looked at the facts that COVID has disproportionately affected our Black neighbors with infection rates and economic hardship more than our white neighbors? And perhaps at CAC, our view, what if the scale of those 4,000 people gave us a big enough view to see that our beautiful, healthy community was much healthier for some people than it was for others, and that this difference fell largely on racial and ethnic lines? What happens when you look at the success and challenges of online learning when viewed through an equity lens on race? What happens when you listen? We've learned a lot about listening the last few months at CAC as well, and we've heard countless community members' stories of experiencing racism. We've heard their stories of anxiety and fear. They've felt intimidated, singled out, denied services. We've heard stories of people being followed and harassed. And while Northfield has and continues to celebrate an absolutely amazing array of community organizations and local law enforcement, it doesn't diminish the real experiences of our community members. It doesn't change John's experience of being followed by a truck with a Confederate flag for 45 minutes. It doesn't change the moment Gabrielle was told to go back home, you don't belong here. Those are real experiences. And so we need to go back to relationships. Where are the relationships at in each one of our lives? Are we there to remove shame and guilt and tell each other, I've been there, you're not alone. A lot of us need help. These are tough times. It's okay to ask for help. Systems, numbers, justice, relationships. They all come back together, and it's this gospel of loving our neighbor as ourselves that binds it all together. It's Jesus telling his disciples that you're not alone. A lot of us need help. These are tough times. It's okay to ask for help. This is the role of the church and Christians during these challenging times. It's our responsibility to see the inequities in systems and to change them because of the relationships we have with each other and a God who loves us. Thank you for having me with you today. God bless.